Hey, Twisted people, it's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, Twisted CKR, and I'm joined today by my co-host,
MOON for the seventh time. That spells Michael Damian. Woo!
Yes, and as you may already know, we are doing the breakdown and review of episode 7 of The Stand miniseries 2020-2021, The Walk. For this one. And oh boy, did some stuff happen. A lot of stuff happened this episode in terms of a few things. We got to see somewhat of the demon, one of the demon forms of Flag, Randall Flagg. Nadine and him consummated their relationship. So they took the walk in terms of Larry and others to New Vegas. So that happened. And yeah, there's a lot of things to discuss. And Harold, our semi-unofficial star of this miniseries, basically met his end, fittingly so. So a lot of stuff has happened. I have some few feelings about this, and let's, as y'all are saying in the chat, thank you so much for joining us in the chat, by the way, and all of you who are watching on the replay. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for going on this journey with us of The Stand, for better or worse, when it comes to this. And so, as Josh Watson is saying in the chat, let's dig deep into this episode, because yes, there is a lot to talk about. So as you already know, and if you are new here, the way we're going to do it, we go over our overall feelings of the episode. Then we do what actually happened in the episode and the thoughts about the details. And then we have to talk about the book differences along with the 90s miniseries differences. The 90s miniseries, which is what a lot of people know when it comes to how many people know about The Stand. For those who couldn't sit through the whole entire book, I feel you on that. It's a very long book. So let's get right into it as we talk about it. And so, Michael, what were your overall thoughts of episode 7, The Walk?
Well, I've been waiting for this episode since the 90s. I was wondering how they were going to do it. I don't feel the same emotion that I felt towards the original one. And I think because how the whole show, I mean, it's a broken record at this point, but how structurally unsound this whole miniseries has become. It's kind of really hard to want more episodes to happen. And I know there's a few left, but just on the execution, it's very choppy. However, I know a 9-episode miniseries has to start wrapping up, and we've entered into the third act. The character is going to fight the bad guy. Act 2, all hope is lost. We lost a lot of people in that explosion, and now it's up for the good guys to go and face the bad guy and walk towards the third act. So, as far as the season structure goes, it's great. But as far as the whole thing, I think it's a crime shoving this whole book in only 9 episodes.
Which is, kind of interesting when you think about it, because the 90s miniseries did the same thing in 4 episodes. Yeah. And I think a lot of people might have felt a little bit more satisfied from the 90s one thus far, even by the second part of that one. Yet in this one, that's not so much the case as we have been seeing online. And so, yeah, that's very much the thing. As those who are watching this, I put up a picture of those who made it to New Vegas in this episode, which is Larry, Ray, and Glenn, because our boy Stu fell. He was one of the ones that Mother Abigail said was going to fall. And so there's a lot to unpack. For me with this episode, I felt like I couldn't connect as emotionally as I wanted to when certain things eventually happened, such as when Mother Abigail passed away. I felt a lot more sad for Ruby Dee's Mother Abigail when she finally passed than when Whoopi Goldberg's Mother Abigail passed. Probably because we hardly got to really get a sense of her heart and her joy, except, like I said, I've praised how they did her character to have a little bit more grittiness to her, but I felt like they probably should have balanced that with a little bit more of the heart to make a better balance of this being such a prophetic figure. And so for me with this episode, I was happy that a lot of things happened, but at the same time, I was like, man, if this would have been built up better, this would have been such an awesome payoff episode. But because they didn't build up things as well as they could have, like the situation with Nadine. Nadine's situation was probably the only one I felt like was probably the most like, okay, that built up to the right spot where it needed to go. But everything else kind of felt a little empty for me. Even the send-off in the town with Franny and Joe. Shouldn't most of the town should have been sending them off in a way? Knowing that they were going for the final stand? Like, where is the rest of the town? What is going on? And then the aftermath of the explosion also felt kind of muted. You know, you had people kind of walking around, you know, rubbing their shoulders and things like that. But I was like, okay, is that it? I mean, there was a huge explosion in town just now.
Yeah, that was a little weird. I don't know. Maybe they know they have to act fast, and maybe they'll have to like deal with the aftermath later because like so many traumatic events are happening that they only have to they only have the mental capacity to focus on one thing, and that's the balance of good and evil versus, oh my God, my house blew up. And I mean, I don't know. These are all refrigerator questions, but I agree that it did feel a little weird. Like, these five people forced everybody into a pep rally to say the pledge and, you know, get the power back on that, hey, we're going to take down evil once and for all. It was only, all right, catch you later. Here's my guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and I guess we also have to mention, we finally heard a more ecstatic version of Baby Can You Dig Your Man. For those of you who have been going on this journey with us, thank you once again for watching and in the chat and in the replay. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up. We have been talking about how we had not really heard truly Baby Can You Dig Your Man by Larry Underwood. And we finally got to hear it in New Vegas, which I thought was a nice payoff after wondering where the heck is this full version of this song. So that was one aspect of it. And as those of you who are saying in the chat, like Cage, who was saying and agreeing with Michael that we should have had, honestly, like Cage said, I think they should have had set this at least 13 episodes. Others, like Firebrand Entertainment, is saying that, you know, we'd rather compare, you know, that they would rather compare this adaptation to the source material. But I think in a way you kind of have to compare it to the 90s version because someone else did do it. And the question is, did they do it better? And if the 90s version did it better, did we really need this 2021 version of it? And that's a question that I think a lot of people are asking when it comes to this. So, I mean, that's one aspect of it. And so that's something to think about when it comes to this rendition and adaptation of The Stand. So, okay, so let's talk about what actually happened this episode, right? The main three things was we saw Trash Can again, briefly. And I think we have to talk about Trash Can because I saw some talk around the interwebs about Ezra Miller's portrayal of Trash Can Man, and some people had concerns. So we're going to talk about it, and I want to know y'all thoughts of it. And then also, we need to talk about Nadine's and Harold's journey and the Harold's end, and then finally the walk, and then, you know, with Mother Abigail. So I guess let's talk about Trash Can Man first. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a big problem with Trash Can, and not in the way that the internet would expect. Nick is the only deaf one in this whole apocalypse with hearing loss and everything, but the guy who's blowing up everything can hear perfectly fine. Like that's always been my problem with The Stand in general. Like, how is he not leaning into Flag going, what? No, I'm sorry. I've been trying to blow up everything in America for like the past 9 months. I can't hear. Speak up. But no, like Nick is the only deaf one.
Mm-hmm. And Nick is no more.
Yeah, because I used to play, like, I bottle rocket wars all the time growing up in the South, and, like, things blew up. And, like, you said what a lot growing up. And this whole time, he has perfect hearing, but he walks like a little Jack Sparrow-y, or mixed with a Joker. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'm interested in this character, but I know he can be considered problematic.
Now, my feeling about this character, and I told y'all last week that I was on the fence about the portrayal of Ezra Miller's Trash Can Man, because I was like, this is borderline, okay, this could be a genius sort of Joker sort of portrayal, or this could be chewing at the scenery over the top. And this episode made me think that maybe it was a little over the top. And I have to highlight JJ's in the chat, their thing, because this was exactly what I said when we were watching it earlier. I said that screeching is ridiculous at this point. I think the screeching is a little too much, and I have to agree. I was like, what? Why? And I think others have questioned. I saw one person saying, and others agreeing, that Trash Can Man's portrayal is a bit offensive to those with disabilities and whatnot, or mental health issues, I should say, more so mental health issues, because, what he's doing is he's jotting his jaw out. He's walking a certain way. He's screeching uncontrollably, or maybe with glee. And there's this question of, well, even in the 90s version, that's not how he was portrayed. He was portrayed as a guy who really liked blowing up stuff. Okay, fair enough. He's a little off, but whatever. And I feel like Ezra Miller has taken this, and even in the book there, and we'll talk a bit more about this with the book comparison, he, as we were saying last week, he is a capable person for the most part, but then he has these moments where he kind of snaps. And I feel like Ezra Miller is going full on.
Yeah.
What's that movie with Ben Stiller? And Robert Downey Jr. playing a black guy, playing a white,
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, where they talk about, going full on, and I'm not going to say it here because that's an offensive term, but it was kind of a play making fun of how people can do that in Hollywood, where you go full on, supposedly the stereotype that you think you're playing, and it's like, no, don't do that because it's too much. And that's how I kind of feel about Trash Can Man.
Yeah, the character's term. Yeah, Simple Jack. He went a little bit too pyro Simple Jack.
Yeah, and I was like, it's too much now. Now, luckily he wasn't. I was a little worried that they were going to keep going to him throughout the episode. I was like, one opening scene is enough. So we know he has the warhead. And one of the things I wondered, I was like, how safe is it for him to have the warhead? Because we saw the little meter that said that it was reaching dangerous circuit levels. So I think there was a reason why that was highlighted. So we know that there's probably something wrong happening. So we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, I missed the whole crystallization, or the guy who originally played, forgive me, I forgot his name, but he's a fantastic character actor. But the original Trash Can in the 90s was just like kind of candied over with like a crystal film. And the more he blew up, the candy film, this was 90s practical effects, but it was golden. And yeah, his skin was kind of shaved off, but the scars that Trash Can has now look like he hasn't blown up anything in a really long time.
Mm-hmm. They hasn't been doing it actively enough.
Yeah, like if Captain trips, it hasn't been a year in this whole universe of The Stand. How has his face recovered that much?
Well,
unless he did it in the past.
He has done it in the past.
But why isn't anything new now? Like, that's just my only problem with him.
Okay.
He doesn't look recently. He doesn't look like a recent pyrotechnic. He may look like a recovered pyro.
Okay. So that's your main issue with him. You don't think that there's an issue with the way he's portraying?
Oh,
that
yeah,
he's making it someone with mental issues, with mental health issues, a bit of a caricature?
Yeah, like that character should be played at 11, But at the same time, if you play at 11, the payoff won't be good all the way. So he kind of has to like dial it back down to like a 5 or a 6, even though Trash Can's level 5 or a 6, maybe Flag's level 12. So to play a character like that, I don't know if Ezra should have played Trash Can. Maybe like a more seasoned actor who knows how to like fluctuate a role. I like Ezra Miller, but maybe it was the direction of the director of that episode. So that might be it too. But yeah, just to play it full loopy like that, like you were at least
that's screeching. I couldn't. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? That just seems so cheesy to me. But let us know in the chat and in the replay.
I could go on forever.
What your thoughts are regarding Trash Can Man. We saw a little bit more of him this episode. We got introduced to him last episode. Do you think it is kind of, over the top necessarily? So that is, something we have to address. But now we know that Trash Can Man has the radiation or warhead thing. So that's a thing. And that's the last we've heard of him, but we know that he's heading towards Vegas. So we know there is literally a warhead heading towards Vegas right now, which is in itself probably a ticking time bomb. So that's good that they let us know that. The circuit check was what that thing was that had it. Okay, so now we move on to the walk. Mother Abigail is back. And so it's the aftermath of the fire and whatnot. And Mother Abigail is back. And it's like, she wakes up and she's not blind. We got to talk about that, y'all. She's not seemingly blind. She just got her eyes closed. For those of you who know the book in the 90s version, she didn't seem like she went blind. And she's just lying there. Ray is by her bedside. Ray, who has been the ride or die for Mother Abigail. And so she wakes up briefly and she says, she basically gives them the prophecy, which is that she has sinned with the sin of pride. And that she was not the potter in terms of building Boulder, but she was the clay in terms of shaping the people who needed to go have the final stand. And they needed to go to the Dark Man, Flag's stronghold, and one will not see the end of that journey, she prophesies. She also said something about others needed to stay behind because of betrayal and things like that, which may be hinting at perhaps things going on in Boulder after things happen. Like we had heard that there might be a bigger expanding of Boulder and the stand post-apocalypse. And then Mother A dies. Yeah. She finally gets to rest. A candle goes out. It kind of left me like I cared. Like this wasn't it was just so muted. What did you think?
I thought, structurally, like your main motivation, like your Obi-Wan Kenobi has to die before you go on and like fight the bad guy. And I understand why she had to die in this episode alone. But yeah, because I think Mother Abigail, who's played really well by Whoopi, maybe because she was more of a person and she spent more time in the whole show talking about how she wanted to go, like she didn't want to be here anymore. So I took it as more of like good for her, like a refreshing thing, because she wanted this, as opposed to the original one where it's like she's holier than thou, and when she died, the spirit of why they're in Boulder died.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel that in this episode.
And I think part of that is because, and I agree with you to a certain degree on that, because part of that might be because we only saw glimpses of her. Nick was more of her voice and more prominent in people's eyes. But then even Nick's death felt muted. Yeah. Nick dies. They talk about, well, what are we going to bury? She already knows Nick has passed. No one's told her anything. So that lets you know that she knew about Nick, and that was kind of the supernatural aspect of it. But at the same time, I was like, I didn't feel as much. I felt like I appreciated that they made her more real, but I didn't feel such a ending when she passed away. I was like, okay. you know? And I was
Yeah.
like, well, now they're on their way. This had to happen. But I just felt a little underwhelmed. Let us know in the chat and in the replay.
Yeah.
Did you feel underwhelmed by Mother Abigail's death? Because I felt a little underwhelmed. This was a major thing that happened. But then again, even on her journey into the woods, that seemed pretty significant. I love that they had her and Randall Flagg. But then she comes back, she's there for all of a sudden, and then she passes. And it was just very quiet. She exhaled and she died.
Yeah, just
yeah.
I don't know. It just felt mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt more mechanical than emotional. Like, okay, this should happen. We're gonna lose Mother Abigail.
Yeah.
And Stu, it answered our question of Stu now taking on the leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Nick had to die, Abigail had to die in order for the first character at the beginning of your show to become the hero.
In a way, it was kind of like we're checking off the boxes of the story. Yeah, that's
just mechanical structure. Like, I have a ton of script writing books up here, and screenwriting down to the atoms, and I'm sure, like, we could just do a reading, and you could pretty much know how the stand's going to end.
Yeah. Exactly, with the way it plays off. So it was like, okay, sure. Like Vera Morris, who is saying, hey, Vera, thanks for joining us, chat. Also, Kojak came back. I was very happy to see Kojak. LOL, Kojak came back like magic. JJ also said earlier in the chat, at least Kojak is back. I was very happy to see Kojak, although I don't know where he was up to this point. Even with Glenn being around most of the time, you would think Kojak would constantly be by his side. He wasn't. And this was the episode where Kojak suddenly was here for the walk. Once again, another check off because Kojak's supposed to be there for when Stu falls. So we got that. But yay for Kojak being back, you know. Okay. So Mother Abigail dies and we're heading into winter, and Franny, of course, is resistant. I really liked what Franny said about this. And I liked that this is probably one of the moments where I liked this Franny a bit more than 90s version Franny, because she wasn't hysterical about no, you can't go, because she's also been a leader in all of this situation. So she understands the situation. And she said, are we all just pawns playing chess game pawns? You know, are we all just pawns for God and everyone else on Flagg's side are pawns for him? And I thought that was a poignant moment. She kind of was resigned to understanding that, but also being like, well, this is what you have to do. So that was kind of a heartfelt moment between her and Stu, knowing that they had to go, and her kind of addressing the situation they're in, that it's bigger than them and they're kind of just pieces to get whatever end game that's supposed to happen.
Yeah. No, and that was one thing I liked about this episode too, was like how I started to like Franny or understand her in this one. To me, it just felt like it was a send-off of her husband's going off to war, and I hope he makes it back. And like it felt real. So I actually like applaud Franny in this episode.
Yeah.
Which I've been waiting to do. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know we've all had our issues with this Franny in terms of the portrayal and the things that she chooses, but it was nice that she wasn't obnoxious and being like, no, Stu, you can't go, or something like that, which is what happened in the 90s version. So I appreciated that they didn't do that as much. And then we have them going on the walk. And as Matt C in the chat pointed out, Ray smile and laugh when talking about finding water was amazing. Yeah, the Indian girl type thing. Yeah. And I love that they played up Ray's indigenous roots for this one, because as people may or may not know, this Ray, and I've said it earlier, this is a gender change. This is a gender switch, because Ray is actually, I believe, Ralph in the book and the 90s series, and they changed it to a woman, and not just, like a generic, not like they changed it to a woman of color, which I thought was very good. And they could play on that little aspect of her nationality and her ethnicity, I should say, when it came to that. So that was a nice little thing that they had going on. I did point a technical issue out. I guess Stu is shaving constantly because they were on the road for weeks. And James Marsden, I don't know if it's in his contract that you can't, cover up that pretty face or whatever like that. But he had, somehow everyone else kept getting the beards except James Marsden. So, yeah.
Wow. It goes back to that and another question that they don't really talk about. Prior to winter, I know snow is on the ground, but you're telling me from when Captain Trips began to before the first snowfall, everybody was cutting the grass? It's like the Walking Dead question. Like, the grass is always immaculate in Georgia.
Who's doing the upkeep around here? Yeah. I don't know.
Who's shaving Marston? Who's cutting the grass? Yeah.
That's Hollywood magic. Damon is saying in the chat, they should have let us get to know Ray a little bit more. I keep saying that. And Damon, you did. For those of you who have watched these replays and joined us live, Damon has been rooting for more Ray time. And I totally agree, because she's like my second fave character. I think Tom Cullen, who we did not see and have not seen in the last 2 episodes, is my first character that I love, and then Ray is probably a good close second because of, you know, the portrayal and what she has said when she called out the committee and things like that. And it would have been nice to get to know her and like why she has been such a staunch supporter of Mother Abigail. What's her backstory? Why has she been so much about Mother Abigail that she was the one always by her bedside, always by her side? And it would have been cool to get an in-depth kind of view of why that was. We got so much backstory of Harold and others. It would have been great to get a little bit more of Ray.
Yeah, Ray was too good as far as like characters go. I would much rather focus on her. I can't really add anything new to this, but like, because we've talked about like how much we enjoy Ray as well. But I'm hoping that in the next 2 episodes from now, she plays a bigger part.
Yeah, I think she will, given what may or may not happen with her character. And so they go on the walk. One of them eventually falls, and basically it is Stu. Stu breaks his leg. They have to leave him there. They go on, and then they are intercepted by everyone's favorite character, or not, Lloyd, in all of his glory. That shirt, oh my gosh, that shirt he was wearing. Yes, that's very much how he was. Hey, boys. And Lloyd intercepts them, and we get a little bit of a look of New Vegas and what Flag is telling people, the beating up. It's very barren in the street, so it's not a lot of people there. It's kind of empty, which is interesting because Boulder seemed more populous than Vegas, so maybe that might be a sign of perhaps how Flag is not recruiting as many people as he wants.
Yeah, I was thinking that every time they go to Vegas with I love Lloyd too, honestly. I really do. I'll go into my point, but I just want to comment on JJ0307. I really enjoy this Lloyd too the more I watch him, because he doesn't seem that evil to me. He just seems like he's got like a part-time gig doing evil shit, but he's just enjoying Vegas. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool. Like, I don't know his degree of how bad of a person Lloyd is. And I kind of become more of a fan the more I see him, because he just seems like he's finally who he wants to be. I really enjoy his character. So, I mean, that might be I can't talk anymore, an unpopular opinion too. I'm echoing in my headphones. That's what's happening. But yeah, I love this Lloyd, and I forgot what I was going to talk about going into this. Oh yeah, Inferno. Inferno in Las Vegas in real life is a restaurant, and the streets are empty, which I thought is odd. Mm-hmm. Like, how are we in this fairy tale land of debauchery, and then it's just like, oh, the restaurant's just popping? Like, there's a big difference between that. Like, it's not Sodom and Gomorrah, it's like Steak and Shake.
Well, it seems like everyone is in one spot. It doesn't seem as populous or as many people are there as in Boulder. So maybe that's one aspect of it. People aren't getting drawn to him. They're going to Boulder, which may be why he wants to get rid of Boulder, right? And so you have that going on, and Glenn and Larry and of course Ray do not seem impressed at all with New Vegas. It's kind of like, oh, this is finally it. And we're not going to go to who they end up coming across just yet, because we got to talk about her specifically, Nadine. But that's basically what happens. Stu is in a ditch right now, and we don't know his fate at this moment. If you don't know the books or anything, you don't necessarily know his fate. So that's where we're at with him. Yeah. So then we have before we get to Nadine, because there's a lot of thoughts I have about Nadine. Yeah. So let's talk about Harold. Harold's finally dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the fact that we finally got the death of Harold, the unofficial star of this series, or maybe the official? I don't know. The kind of focus they put on this character.
Well, it was very heavy-handed. But I know, like, as a writer, writers tend to fall into the trap of writing stories about writers and making them the most important people in the room. And what I really loved symbolically about Harold is, in the beginning, this sad little guy just put his rejection letters on a nail on the wall. And then he literally got put on nature's nail on a cliff. And I thought that was very fitting. It was, for lack of a better word, a really good bookend. And also, from a structural standpoint, if you're turning this whole world into one season, it was right for Harold to die this episode. Because Harold isn't the primo bad guy. Harold was the bad guy for Boulder in a world full of good people and gray characters. And now, because we don't have to deal with Harold anymore, we can focus on the other baddies like Trash Can or Flag, Nadine. Like, you can go down the list. Even the girl with the pink hair, Katie, what was her name?
Julie.
Yeah, Julie. I knew it ended with an E. But I thought, once again, structurally as opposed to emotionally and story-wise, Harold's death was a really good bookend for an end of Act 2.
Yeah, I agree. I was ready for him to die. I'm not gonna lie. I was ready for Harold to go because I was like, it was time. And he wasn't supposed to be in Vegas. The thing is, I think it was fitting, as Cage is saying, one thing I really noticed Harold's death is that this time it was specifically Nadine who caused him to crash. And I think we have to talk about that too, because that's actually different from the book and different from the 90s version. And so I thought it was fitting because Harold is a man who didn't really belong anywhere. You know, he didn't really belong at Boulder. He wasn't going to fit in Vegas necessarily. I thought it was very telling what he told Nadine after they blew up. They did the explosion in Boulder, which is, Flag is going to get me a woman that makes you look like a potato sack. He threw shade at her. He immediately rejected her for the sexual stuff they had been doing. He was like, that's over. That's done. We all know that was what you were just doing that for. And then he pointed out to her, he was like, if I was you, I'd be very scared about what it means to be this man's chosen woman.
Yeah.
And I thought that was poignant that he pointed that out to her, because it was like, yeah, I'd be wondering that too. Like, why are you, I get it. She has been seduced by it, but it's like, are you not worried that this guy, this person, this thing wants you so bad? Like, what that might entail for you, And I thought that was something. Damon is saying in the chat, God loves potheads. That's why he had all of them go to Boulder, Colorado. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Firebrand Entertainment is saying in the chat, Michael, great observation. Harold keeps getting rejected and he died the way his dreams of being a writer have. That was very poignant. Yeah. And, even his letter at the end, I don't know. What did you think about his letter? Because I was like, okay, he's kind of saying, had I been brave enough to join in with the rest of the world. I felt like the kids represented the world, because he said, had I been bold enough to show them, to join in with the rest of their fun, maybe I would have turned out different. And it kind of, I think, reflected someone who does not have a home, who never felt like he belonged, even in this world. So the heralds of the world had to go, in a way, if you think about it.
Yeah, wasn't any room for him. Now it's like, this is it. No turning back now.
Yeah, exactly. And Jesse in the chat, thanks for joining us, Jesse, is saying, I hope Stu makes it. We hope so too. Stu has been a great character. One of my issues with this miniseries has been I didn't get to see him as much as I would have liked. I felt like he kind of took a back seat to Franny a little bit, and then Franny and everyone else took a back seat to Harold. So that's something. Yeah, so we have it. So Stu has fallen and Harold is dead. I thought that was a great scene of the of the birds eating his face.
Yeah, that was, oh my God. Like, I've been waiting for some good practical effects. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I knew this show had it. It's like, why isn't it more utilized?
Mm-hmm. More of they definitely play up the sex in this series, but in terms of the grossness, I thought the most they really played up was how the plague affected people's necks. But then from then on, except for this episode with the walk, where you had some views of the countryside and them passing by dead bodies. So there were some cool directorial things with that, but I felt like they could have played that up a bit more. And that was not played up as much until this episode, which was fine. And so Damon is saying in the chat, wow, I ain't even see the irony of the tree impelling Michael. He is telling, not you getting impelled, but the tree impelling Harold.
Maybe one day.
Michael, thing. And so we had that happen. And so I feel like it was a fitting end. So we can talk about how it was different from the 90s version. That 90s Harold did leave a note, but it wasn't as poetic, which is fitting to how much focus this Harold has got, right? So that he got a whole page read. And Larry, wanted to cover him up. And they did the whole thing about how Larry was like, I got to Boulder because of Harold's ways of showing me, which they played up in the beginning when Larry first got there. So that came back around in a way, because I know some people in the chat last week and others were wondering why play up this connection between Larry and Harold necessarily. And I guess maybe it was for that moment that Larry would find the note, because had they all just decided to pass him by, no one would have found the note. So storytelling, plot device, sure. And Ray was probably the only one that was real with it, where she was like, no, you don't got to go cover this man up. And I was like, I'm with Ray on that. But I know we had to do that so Larry could find the picture and we could get the view of what Harold turned into.
Yeah, like, do we have to cover Harold just because, like, he covered the bomb and the piano? Like, why do we have to even care about this man? But I love the fact that he signed the note Hawk at the end. It was his redemption. He couldn't come back, but I just love that was the only way that he could, like, through death.
Yeah, and I agree with you and Matt in the chat, who's talking about the same thing about signing a Hawk. And I wrote in my notes, I was like, oh, Teddy. Teddy was who named him Hawk. Teddy who Nadine shot, and Teddy who he loved, who collected cool DVDs and stuff. And so he used the thing. And as Vera is saying in the chat, yes, Harold was misled. Yeah. And so we got that. So Harold is no more. And now we can focus on perhaps the real main characters of this,
With two episodes left.
With 2 episodes left. Now we can focus a bit more on the other. So we got to talk about Nadine.
Oh,
Nadine. Oh my gosh. So Nadine causes the crash of Harold. She basically caused it herself. She looked at him and she decided on her own that Harold wasn't going to make it. Do you think it was maybe because of what Harold had told her about Flag, that she felt some type of way, that he was like, dissing what's supposed to be his queen in a way? Or do you think she just really, like she told him, it's better this way, you wouldn't fit in, he will kill you anyway? Did you believe that Flag was really going to kill him? Or do you think that was just Nadine's excuse?
That's the question right there. That's really good. I thought maybe it was multiple things, like her characters appearing to be layered now. Like, I feel like maybe some of that deep down the subtext is she's still her real love in the pandemic, or Captain Trips is that felt weird to say, I'm sorry, but her real love is Larry. And Larry treated her right in the beginning, or like she felt like the thing with Larry that she didn't feel for Harold at all. And Harold, becoming this angry, dissing guy, like, no woman wants to be around that. And So there's probably that. And also she probably knows that Flag had had everything planned out for him. And that, because she lost Larry, she doesn't really care about Harold. She's following orders with Harold. And, she gets to fool around a little bit on her way to Vegas, but it's not what she wants. And because she can't have Larry, she has to give in to Flag wholeheartedly.
I see some. I'm gonna push back a little bit and say I don't think Larry was like her big love, or they didn't do a very good job of showing that. I feel like Larry was maybe the adult guy that she felt the most connection to in the last couple of years, perhaps, but there wasn't as much. They could have built that up a bit more. We've talked about how the whole basis of Larry rejecting her wasn't really strong enough, because there is no Lisa, who in the previous adaptation and in the book is there for Larry to kind of choose a different relationship. And in this one, he just was trying to be a gentleman, and she still was just like, okay, fine, you rejected me this one time, or kind of told me, let's go out tomorrow. And I just was like, nah, I'm still gonna make this deal with the devil. Okay, sure. So
I'm only going off of like what this show gave me.
Exactly.
So, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I didn't feel like, I felt like Larry cared for her. I do think Larry cared for her. And maybe if we got a little bit of her, Larry and Joe's journey to Boulder, except for what we got in the series was the day of them getting there, and a Larry thing and then a Nadine thing, maybe we would have seen that deeper connection but with them. And I didn't feel like we got it as much. But basically she decides that Harold has to die. Harold kills himself. He kind of does the brave thing and doesn't just decide he just wants to die by starvation. And then we have it so that scene of Nadine and Flag in the desert / the hotel. What we really realize is that she got screwed on the desert floor, not even with a blanket anywhere like that. And basically he did something with her mind and made her think that she was in a bed of roses, and it was so romantic. There was nothing romantic. He screwed her on the desert floor. And we finally also got to see the picture, the look of Flag.
Okay.
Let's talk about
kids,
the demon.
Leave the room. Leave the room for a couple of minutes, kids, and come right back. Although I don't think kids are watching like orgies in Vegas.
So what did you think of that whole thing? And then how we finally got to see, because some of us have been talking about, we have not seen Flag change into a demon. And in the 90s version, he had done that a few times where we got to see glimpses of that. And this was our first time seeing a demon version of Flag. I got my thoughts, but I want to know what you thought first.
Okay. Well, I thought the transition or the delusion of the desert floor to Vegas, like back and forth, like, where am I? There's a lot of mystery here. I thought that was really good. But what took me out of it is like, okay, you have this guy, this demon, this powerful force in the King universe. And I love like what demons look like. Where like in The Stand, the original one, where his face got all contorted and then demon horns. But this guy looked like the dude who, there's a YouTube video of a guy sitting on a counter, like covering himself up in peanut butter. And like, he looked like he was covered in peanut butter and Oreos. And he was just bald and nothing. Like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I felt really bad for Nadine in this. Like this is the guy. Sorry, I shook the table. Like, this is the guy covered up in like peanut butter and Oreos or dirt. Yeah, I love that. Yes. That is awesome. That could be a Halloween mask. You could wear that any year, and that would be a reoccurring King classic. And then we go to peanut butter and Oreos on the desert floor. Like, it was like really, like, I feel like he looked like a larva about to evolve into the devil. Like, I'm all covered. Or it's like in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, anytime Danny DeVito gets naked and oils himself up for like a funny situation. Like, that's what that reminded me of. Like, I'm not afraid of this guy. This guy's a dirtbag banging women on the floor covered in dirt and peanut butter. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just really was underwhelmed because I thought because we weren't seeing a lot, we hadn't seen any version of the demon flag, that when we finally saw him when he was having sex with Nadine, that it would be like, oh my gosh, this dude is like whoa. And what we saw was kind of a CGI'd sort of dirty zombie look.
Yeah.
And I have a picture up, for those of you who are watching, a picture of the 90s version of Flag One, because he actually changed into a few different versions of a demon in the 90s version. And this was one of the more consistent versions of himself that he would go in and out of. And so to me, I mean, maybe because also I'm a big fan of practical effects, so I really appreciated the art that might have, as a horror fan, the art that went into these horns and this look that's just so visceral. And then what we got was kind of this CGI'd flag in the desert screwing her. And it was kind of dark and shady too, so you couldn't even really make out what it was. And I'm just hoping maybe there's a different form, that maybe this is just one of the forms, so we'll see an even more intense
form so
later, because I was a bit underwhelmed by what we saw of his demon self. I'm like, man, we've been waiting and that's that. I don't get this. I don't get the horns. I mean, can we get a little bit of a demon kind of look instead of a Sandman zombie? So let us know in the chat and in the replay. Once again, thank you all for joining us. What you thought of that? Were you underwhelmed by his look? Were you expecting more? Do you think we're gonna get another version? I wasn't impressed.
I'm hoping he has a new form every episode. And I know the comment isn't up, but I need to defend myself. Firebrand Entertainment said that someone doesn't like peanut butter or dirt. I love peanut butter. I just think Nadine deserves to she deserves better a little bit, at least like somebody
she deserved a better demon.
Yeah, not like a demon who cleans herself up. Like, yeah, she's Dan, but she deserves a demon from a cleaner level of hell, is all I'm saying.
Cage is saying in the chat, I think maybe it wasn't actually Randall Flagg, but a demon from Dark Tower series. I think it was Flagg. I think it was one of his versions of himself, because I do think that I'm just thinking maybe there is a different version of him. And within them consummating that union, she does realize something is wrong, but I felt like she just kind of stayed there and he kept pushing and stuff like that. But it was just kind of like breathless. It wasn't this moment of terror that I was also expecting. I was expecting this moment of when she saw the face that she would be completely horrified. And so then what we ended up getting was the next day coming out of the desert, and she looked glamorous. I was also and she was smiling and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, that's different. Did she go insane and just kind of put herself in delusion? Did he do something to her? Because she seems to be thinking she looks great and everything is cool. Yeah. Were you surprised by that? I thought after she saw who he really was that she'd be kind of, we got to talk about the book comparison and the 90s comparison, but I thought even in this version that she wouldn't be as delusional as she was.
Well, well, I'm trying to, how do I phrase this? She hooked up with trash and is delusional by trash. I don't know what it is. I mean, she's lusts after a guy in a Canadian tuxedo who's covered in dirt. But and the weird thing is he was on top, she was on the floor, and he had more dirt on than she did. But I'm still not over that. But yeah, I thought delusion, like maybe she got a good taste of the dead eyes or the space eyes. Like maybe she's like, maybe something about what Flagg's got like makes her see, all that glimmers is gold.
Okay. Yeah. That did throw me off. And that's why I wanted to talk about Nadine's story a little bit later on, because they really kind of did remix this a bit to the point where I was like, I don't know where this is going with this character necessarily.
And Larry shows up.
And as people have been saying in the chat, that when Larry looked at her, it was like, yikes. And Vera in the chat also said, well, she looked like yikes. And so we saw the glamour version of what we thought she was looking like until I thought that was kind of a cool reveal. It was like all this time I thought she was looking great and everything, and that somehow she had been glamorized and that maybe we'd see her belly continuing to grow. But in reality, she's delusional, out of her mind at this moment. And this sunken, aging life force coming out of her pregnant woman is really what she actually looks like. Her hair is a mess. Her skin is dusty pale, and she's really pregnant. And the baby don't seem like it's normal, the way it's going through her body and stuff like that. I thought if nothing else, that was probably funny enough, maybe one of the cooler parts of the thing. And you knew something was up with the way that rat woman and the other henchman was looking at her, because I'm like, why are they looking at her like that? Is it kind of like, oh, this person is here and she's new and who is she? But the reason why you find out, the reason why they're looking at her like this is because she looks the way she does. And so I wonder if this was kind of like the writers thinking, oh, this would be cool to do, or if they have a real reason for changing it like that, because that's not how it necessarily happens in the 90s version or the book material. Do you think they did that for a reason?
I think they did that to get more conflict out of Larry, because I don't believe they meet in the 90s one, right? Like, no, they don't. And yeah, Larry, I think, is in a paddy wagon after he gets picked up on the walk and gets drugged into it. I kind of like this version of it. Because you get to put Larry up against like maybe the one woman he kind of cared about, and then just to see what she's become. And also I thought that was beautiful when they played Baby Can You Dig Your Man, like when they first walked into the hotel and the restaurant, and we finally heard it.
And it sounded good, y'all. I really liked the song. I was like, they should have been playing this throughout the series. This is a good
like
song.
The older one. Yeah,
I'm gonna look for it. I hope it's out somewhere and I can find this updated version, because it actually sounds really good.
It could be a chart topper easily. It's good, and I love what Flag did by pumping that audio into the restaurant hotel, because he's trying to win over Larry with pride, and me as an artist, if somebody was playing my material to get me to come into their hotel, I'd be like, why did you pick that one? Like, I'm kind of shocked. It kind of felt like I heard rumors that Kanye West, all he does is he plays his own songs when people are coming over to his house for parties. And that's what this reminded me of. And maybe that was the angle Flag was trying to go at to win Larry over.
Yeah, exactly. And others in the chat are saying, like Matt is saying, will we hear it again? I hope so. Maybe. I hope so. I think one of the things I'm excited about now is maybe they will play a bit more of Flag talking to the three who make it there, to Ray, to Larry, to Glenn. We know if they go the way it's supposed to go, that he talks to Glenn extensively. But I think it'll be interesting to see how he interacts. But I think one of the things like you said, one of the reasons why they might have made it so that Nadine and Larry meet up is maybe Larry is the one that snaps her out of it, lets her see, do you see what you've become? Do you see what has happened to you? Because Larry has been the one person that can reach her in a way. And so that is something. And Damon is asking in the chat, is that in the book, Nadine greeting them, or is that new story twist? That is a new story twist. And like I was saying, that's why it threw me off, because I was like, this is a little bit of a remixing of this plot line. So it'll be interesting to see if Nadine ever snaps out of it, or if Larry is the one that snaps her out of it. If she doesn't snap out of it, what's going to happen to Nadine as well. So go ahead, Michael.
I have a prediction. At the end of next episode, I mean, can we predict? Are we allowed to predict?
Yeah, you're allowed to predict on this because of the fact that they remixed this plot line. So cool. Because we don't know what's going to happen with this since they changed it up.
I think, I don't know. I think that Larry, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think he has the potential to snap her out of it. And I think she's the one who dies at the end of next episode. Unless less. There is only one way, that King takes a different approach and that the bad guys win and Flag's empire is allowed to flourish in Vegas. Like, that is those are my two predictions. I think that if Nadine doesn't die, Flag's going to win.
Yeah, that might be a remix of it. Tanya Castillo, who is joining us in the chat, hi Tanya, is saying, I'm suspecting they are having her and the baby survive. That baby will grow up and play a part in the 9th episode, Coda. I think that might be an aspect of it, because you then have Franny, who is also pregnant. So it's going to be something where the babies grow up and now they're going to be battling it off or something like that.
It's basically going to be toddler Cobra Kai. Like,
oh, geez.
Had to get one in there. No, sorry.
Yeah, had to get a Cobra Kai reference.
We won't talk about that anymore.
And Tad Dawson in the chat is also saying Nadine was always destined to die. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing about this, and we have to talk about it. It's like they kind of remix some stuff. So you kind of have to, and there's a little bit more of the baby playing a bit more of a prominent role in this adaptation in the look of it and things. So I'm like, why build that up? I think there could be, a play on maybe switching it around a little bit, especially with the way they have made her respond to Flag, and we'll be segueing over into the to the book and the 90s comparison. But in that one, he freaked her out. She became catatonic, basically. Yeah. And she was like, this is hell and things like that. And now she's like, welcome to New Vegas. And she's like down with the sickness of this, and that's a totally different, that's like a 180 of the way this story has gone before. So you have to kind of wonder, why are they doing it this way? And I think that's the question of it. And I'm interested to see where that goes, because that threw me off. I was like, oh, okay. And I will be interested to see her and Larry's conversation. Larry, for lack of whether it was built up or not, wasn't really in love with her, or was in love with her as we are made to believe. So maybe that's part of the drama of it. So that may be a thing, you think?
Yeah, I'm almost at a loss for words. Oh yeah, I love that. We are dead and this is hell. That part was so good.
Yeah, Tanya says that in the chat, and that's the thing. That's one of the things that is said in the 90s version as well. And it was like, okay, so is Nadine gonna hit that part, or what?
I think she's almost there. I think she's almost at that part.
Mm-hmm. JJ in the chat is saying they really made Franny and Nadine opposites. That may be like all of you are kind of, because we do know that Stephen King wrote the 9th episode, and that one of the rumors or speculation is that he writes it to expand the universe, to take it into past where the book did. And this may be playing into it. Also, thank you, Tad Dawson, for subscribing. Yay! And you also say, but King isn't going to let the Antichrist be born, by the way, just subscribe. Yes, both of those things, I hope, are true. Yeah. Thank you so much. And to all of you who are subscribed or subscribing, thank you so much for doing so. It's really appreciated, on taking this creepy journey with us as well. Yeah, and it's a great line. I actually want to show a picture as we segue into explaining a bit of the book and the 90s comparison of the other Nadine and what she looked like.
Yeah.
Because I think that's very poignant, and the way she was repulsed by Flag. So I'm going to show that. But what are your thinking in terms of the 90s version of what we've seen so far? Because we're in the home stretch right now, right, Michael? Yeah. The home stretch is the 7th episode. We got 2 episodes left, unless there's another season or some continuation. What are you thinking about how far we've gotten? And let us know in the chat. Also, the other question is, which character, think about this before we get to it, y'all, which character did you identify with most, and which character disgusted you this episode? So what are your thoughts about where this plot line is heading, Michael?
I'm looking forward to it wrapping up. Unfortunately, I enjoyed it. I loved it. Yeah, that's new Nadine.
Wrong one.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah. I mean, I do like how I didn't know how her hair was going to be full on white, like the original one was.
Yeah, that was the difference, right? Because she was supposed to have black hair.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, she went from blonde to like almost like otherworldly porn star blonde. Like it was platinum, like dead good. But yeah, that's the original Nadine. She looks troubled.
She's troubled. She's repulsed by him. And he kind of takes her back to New Vegas as something of a prize, a trophy. And she's already done with it. But this Nadine, not so much.
And I'm wondering if they're going to spend the next episode, I think it has to almost come to a head. Like, it's not, my prediction is the way the story's going is not going to go well for the people who are in Vegas. Like, something's going to happen. I think Larry might almost fall into it, because he went from being at the top to losing everything to where he's at Vegas. And I think Larry could actually easily be tempted until maybe like the end. And he might spend that, going back to his old vices, but also seeing that, Nadine, this isn't how it should be. And that might help the arc there. As far as everyone else goes, it's interesting because remembering Flag's rule that nobody dies before they enter Vegas. Everybody has a rule and a role that they fall into unless Flag deems otherwise. So it would be really weird and interesting to see how Flag makes up his mind at who's actually good for him and who's bad for him. So I'm wondering, because we have to get to like that, the next episode is the penultimate episode. So we have to almost tie up everything.
Right. And even though a lot happened this episode, there's still the question of the stand. What exactly is the stand going to look like between these three characters, especially with Stu? Is Stu what's going to happen with Stu? Was that the last we saw of Nick and things like that? And just, we got to start comparing it we're in the segment right now. And if you don't want, I wouldn't really call these spoilers, but for those who may be just more associated with the miniseries, this is kind of spoilerish if they follow that. So this is caution that some of these kind of give away, but we won't go too far ahead. We only try to compare up to where they're at. But in the case of Nadine, we kind of have to talk about where her character normally goes, just because of the way this was remixed. And who we have on the screen, if you are watching, is the 90s version Nadine. And in this one, they went more with the book in the 90s version, where she had the black hair, and with every sexual sort of charged encounter she had with Flag, her hair would go whiter and whiter. And when they finally have sex, her hair goes completely white and she is out of her mind and catatonic. And so that's where we're at with her in this version, in the 90s version and in the book version to a certain degree. And there were some differences in the way this was portrayed, as we already talked about, which was that in this one, Nadine seemed cool. She also seemed like he had glamored her in a way to make her see herself as this wonderful, beautiful, ethereal queen, which is what he had been promising her. And in reality, the queen that she looked like was the queen of the damned, and not the Leah beautiful version, for those of you who know that, but more like sick and a vessel for whatever is sucking the energy out of her, which is his baby.
Speaking of vessel, go back just a little bit. We're still in Vegas. We're still talking about Nadine and Flag in general. But one thing I really loved, how Flag in this one utilized technology, like into where he was more of like the modern, like that Johnny Depp movie, Transcendentalism, ironically, because we're talking about Amber Heard. But that I loved how he was able to like project himself on every billboard in Vegas as they were driving towards the Inferno. And I thought that, to me, that was one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Yeah, I definitely thought, and he had like a child with him talking about everything's great here. And then while you're passing by, you see people getting beaten down in the streets. There's a Caesar, funny enough, irony, a Caesar statue of Flag that we noticed. I think Glenn is the one who notices it. And it's kind of like, isn't that something? You know, a fallen empire, right? Rome is a fallen empire. And here it is, flag of a statue of on the Caesar's Palace Hotel, which is a very beautiful hotel if you've ever been to Vegas, but it's, you know, mirrored after the fallen empire of Rome. So yeah, and Tanya is pointing out that Skarsgård's butt was the best character since Harold. That is also something to I feel like Skarsgård probably has it in his contract for every other project he's in to show his butt, because he did that in True Blood too. I feel like he showed off his goods a lot, and he's done that in other movies. He's supposed to be in Godzilla versus Kong. I don't think we're gonna see any Skarsgård butt in Godzilla versus Kong though.
Yeah, I mean, in the last episode, we saw Marston's butt in jeans, just flowing slow motion, and it just seemed like they just honed in on, you know, on some Sonic the Hedgehog butt. Like, that's just what happened. But yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, that was the producers calling. Don't know if you guys heard that on the audio, but my phone went off. But yeah. I wonder whose butt we're going to see next time. Maybe it's Larry's.
No, we saw Larry's butt a little bit when he was messing with the woman, with Heather Graham's character.
Maybe Tom Cullen?
Yeah. Tom. Okay.
M-O-O-N.
No, that's not that character probably.
Yeah.
So Cobra Dove is saying in the chat, it's symbolic for what the state does to its citizens. Ultimately, Caesar, America, the state will fall. Okay.
All right.
That's we're getting into the symbolism.
Yeah.
As we see. And so we're seeing some aspects of that. And then, you know, one of the things I pointed out was that this one made it seem like Nadine took the choice into her hands to have Harold, to basically cause Harold's accident.
Yeah.
And so what you have is a situation in this version where she does that. But from my understanding, it was in the book. And I can't exactly remember how Harold died. I know he died the same way, but I can't remember if Nadine caused it or if she just left.
I think it was
or with a crow or something.
The crow became flag, and Harold saw it and went, because they were driving like early 90s moped motorcycles, and it's just like the blocky ones, and they just turn and Harold falls over. And then I believe Nadine walks up and she's like, "We're damned, Harold. We're damned." And
like, it's probably better this way that you just die here instead of going there. Okay, yeah, now I remember. Okay, so in that one,
like, Flag's just sitting all cool like that, and then he wrecks his bike.
So in that one, it can be said in the 90s version that Flag had chose to kill Harold at that moment. And in this one, Nadine had pretty much chosen it. And in the book, they explained that Nadine asked Flag to kill Harold. So either way, there's a play on Nadine having an influence on his death, except maybe in the 90s version, because as others are saying in the chat, and you may feel the same way in the replay, in the 90s version, Nadine was a bit more of a sympathetic character. I feel like we had some sympathetic moments for this Nadine, especially in her time with Joe and Larry. But I think for the most part, it was very much, she went hand in hand with the corruption from the very beginning, which with Nadine in the 90s version, she was constantly at odds and trying to somewhat fight those situations. So I feel like in that one, you cared for that Nadine a bit more than perhaps feeling sorry for this Nadine and Amber Heard's portrayal of her, or what they had Amber Heard's character do in this one. So I think that's a significant difference. And I would say that the sexual encounter in the desert, I think I'm on the fence on whether or not I liked the 90s version a bit better or this version, because I feel like it made sense for this version because of the fact that he kind of glamored her into thinking what's not really there. So he basically makes her think that she's in this romantic thing, and he's really screwing her on the desert floor and everything. And so that plays a part into how she's going to be when she gets pregnant and all that, where she's like, oh, it's all good, everything's great. And no one else is realizing, everyone else is like, this girl is off a rocker. I feel like I feel like in this one, I feel like in the 90s one, the 90s one made it so it was way more dark.
Yeah.
Know? Right. In the 90s one, it was like, she wants him. She sees this rugged jean wearing guy. And just as they're starting, he changes figures, right? He changes looks. And she is terrified because she finally realizes that this person is not a man. And she's telling him no. And, they played it down because it was TV, but he basically goes, even though she's like, no. So one could argue that she was raped, right? And I think it was more obvious in the book one too, that he keeps going and that it's against her will. I feel like in this one, they didn't make it so much against her will as opposed to her just being like, something's not right, but I'm going to keep going on with it. And that's a choice. I just thought the 90s one, it made sense for the 90s one because in the 90s one, she's catatonic. She's traumatized from having this sexual experience, her first sexual experience with a demon. And so it made more sense. And in this one, not so much because, well, the demon wasn't as scary as the other one, but it seemingly he kind of kept her not seeing it. So I don't know. I'm a little bit on the fence, but it's definitely different from the 90s version and the book version. Do you think, I don't know. What do you think about the choice of not making it so much a sexual assault as opposed to, her just kind of going along with it? I guess that would make more sense for this character.
I think it would too, for like multiple reasons. I think if you showed in today, like, there's definitely a popular opinion that like, consent is key. And, I think the Twitter audiences or the internet in general would have a problem if they saw this and they were like, why does this have to be rape? And I think a safe bet going into this would be she's conflicted with the prophecy, but she goes into it anyway because she's reluctant.
Yeah.
And that might be a studio decision.
Yeah.
But the one thing I liked a little more about the original one was the use of the moon. And like, there was like the blood moon. It's a biblical story. And like, they focused like the moon turning red as blood, like in the book of Revelation. And that really wasn't in this. It was just a reluctant girl with a prophecy.
Yes, exactly. I think you're hitting it really well with the symbolism, catching the things today, Michael. Of the thing. But yeah, it's very true because also the moon, as people, I see y'all jokes and MOON Tom's butt and all that. But the thing is with the moon is a very significant thing, which would make sense why that's kind of Tom's go-to of the moon. The moon is a very central thing, and that hasn't played up as much in this version. And so that's fine. I get what you're saying, that the studio probably decided that way. I think they had to go that route because of what they decided to do with Abigail, what they decided to do with Nadine in this one, with her going along with it being delusional. So it couldn't have been a violent moment between them. So I guess that makes sense.
And it almost seems like this is a friendlier cult.
Yeah.
In a way, like in this version, it doesn't seem as gritty and like evil as the last one, with the exception of the bomb by Harold and Nadine. It just seems like they're like in a very violent NXIVM cult. And that's about it.
Yeah, I think there's aspects of it that also, I feel like that's what's also falling short for me, because I feel like, and we talked about this, off air where we were talking about, I felt like Flag so far has kind of been the guy moving behind the scenes. And I felt like going towards the end of this half of the show, he should have become more prominent in seeing what's going on in Vegas. What's the problem here in Vegas? Are there problems in Vegas? And that's another difference with the 90s version and the book version, is that Flag isn't in as control. Things aren't going the way he necessarily wants them to go in Vegas. We've gotten no sense of that in this series thus far. I don't even know much about Vegas, except every time we go there, someone's screwing in the hotel lobby. So I don't know what's going on with what they're building there, what people are trying to build there. Is it going well? Is it not going well? We've gotten no sense of that. And I feel like they're probably going to try to cram that in the next episode. But I feel like they've shown cracks of that in the other one, because I talked about this with Trash Can, how in the 90s version, I believe it was in the book version too, where he was working in New Vegas for a bit. He didn't just go there and go get the warhead. He was actually there, and then he blew up some planes and stuff, which really messed up some of Flag's plan. Yeah. And so to make amends with his master, he goes to get the nuke. So things were going wrong, but we got no sense of that, because in this version, they made it so Flag just sent him initially to go get the warhead. So it was like, okay, sure. And it's like, I just feel like that's the main issue with this series, is they don't do the build up right. I mean, the moments are cool, but it's like they would land better if you built it up in moments.
Not just remember this cool little factoid from the book while we got a visual of it. And then it's just like, come on, man. Like this would have been an amazing story if it was like 3 seasons long.
Yeah. If we maybe in the first season focused on people getting to Boulder and what was happening in New Vegas in the second season and things like that. And which is crazy, because we say that, but the 90s version did it in like 4 parts.
And it comes back to like the adaptation and who's adapting it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And adaptations
to focus on.
Yeah, they're hard. Adaptations are like almost impossible to do, especially with this book that's like 1,200 pages.
Yeah, just tell that to the people who keep trying to adapt Dark Tower, and how that's just hard to do because of how epic and much it sprawls. Tanya in the chat is saying, I missed the little bits and pieces of things falling apart and him losing his power slowly. Exactly. I just keep seeing things of him floating in the air, looking out the window.
He's David Blaine. Like he's David Blaine. He floated above or Chris Angel, whichever one floated above the pyramid. Like, and he's got the dead eyes from it. Like that's it. And he looks like he's covered in dirt. I still can't get over that, but
yeah, exactly. Tanya is also saying in the chat, they could have used that portion about Trash blowing up the planes and such to at least establish more of Trash Can Man psychology. That as well. And that's what I was saying in the last one. But I felt like that would have been a perfect way of saying, hey, things aren't going that great in New Vegas, because I have no sense of what's going on in New Vegas, to be honest.
It's closed except for the Inferno. And they sent somebody down the walk all the way down to the end of Caesar's Palace, which if you ever took that walk, it's pretty long, just to turn him into Caesar and the Flag.
Yeah. Matt in the chat is saying, does episode 8 end at the same point as the 90s did? And will episode 9 be completely new? I think that's the question people are having.
That might be.
We know that Stephen King actually came back to write episode 9, so it may be completely different, or maybe he remixes the end of the Stand. So we'll see where that goes, because I think with some of the choices they're making, there probably will be a remix to some.
What if we find out in episode 9 that while everyone's too focused on fighting each other from Colorado and Nevada, what if like there's this dude named Chuck up in Maine, like Derry, Maine, and Stephen King universe, and he's been plotting something this whole time that's way bigger and better than anything Flag was ever going to do. But because they were only focused on the regionally specific things, that this dude from Derry, Maine is making an empire that's just going to overtake the Southwest. We don't know. We just don't know. That was probably really stupid. But
I don't think it was stupid. I just don't. I think it's going to be somewhere in the Stephen King universe itself. Yeah. And maybe some character that's already established, if anything. But I really do think about with what some other people are saying in the chat about how it may be more of a thing with the babies and the influence of that. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing I wanted to point out, and this is semi-spoilery, but it's the way Damon Robinson was asking in the chat whether this was a twist, and it is a twist, because one of the things, Nadine isn't around when Larry, Glenn, and Ray show up, more so because Nadine's dead by then in the 90s version. She ends up going off of the balcony and she dies before they even get there. Now she senses they're coming and she's like, your empire's about to fall. She's basically eggs Flag on, right? And then he pushes her in some way. I think in the 90s version, she just falls. But I think in the book, he pushes her because she goaded him. She basically she made him mad because they haven't showed this as much for whatever reason in this either, that Flag has a very fragile ego. And when you mess with his ego, like the whole thing of him not knowing who Tom Cullen was and couldn't sense him, that really gets to him because he feels like it makes him feel not as powerful. And they haven't been playing that up. He's just been Mr. Cool the whole time, which doesn't really play on the fact that this guy has a temper, that he can go kind of crazy, except for that one time when he killed the dude in the elevator. But he has a temper where he goes off when he feels like his ego has been insulted and whatnot. And so what you were supposed to get is moments like that. And Nadine, because she's become hostile towards him, eggs him on, he pushes her over. And that the only way she was going to get free is if he killed her. And that's what happens. So that doesn't seem to be the case right now because she seems to be down with the sickness of Flag. Yeah. So it's like, that is a very big difference because she dies before they even get there. So that's kind of a big, it's kind of a big thing. And you kind of wonder, is she going to die the same way? Is she going to die at all? You know, and in the chat, yeah. And in the chat, Damon is saying they played down everyone's spiritual link, like to do knowing when Harold did what he did and how he felt it and things like that. And I do think that's another thing. They've played down some more of the supernatural aspect of the show for some reason, which is weird.
But Flag can do magic tricks in a penthouse.
Yes, he can fly and things like that. But everyone else, it's like, well, it's the only supernatural thing, the fact that they're having dreams. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cage is saying in the chat, yes, Dark Tower needs a series, not movies. And don't get me wrong, the movie sucked. All the actors gave great performances. Very true. That's another one that involves Flag in it to a certain degree as the Dark Man, but it's a whole different kind of thing, rendition of Flag, but very cool book series. Okay, so finally, the other difference was that Mother Abigail did not go blind in this. She goes blind in the other ones. They did not emphasize that she went blind at all in this one. I don't know why they went that route.
Yeah, I don't know.
They never mentioned why she had to lose her sight to gain her sight. They don't go into that. Another missed opportunity, I think. So there's that.
No, that's a very good point. I don't have anything for that one.
Yeah.
But I agree.
Okay, so finally, Michael, and you all in the chat and also in the replay, thank you for joining us. Which character did you like the most this episode, and which character did you despise this episode?
Ooh, I have my answer right here, and I just keep forgetting this guy's name every week, but I relate to Glenn.
As a skeptic, or?
Yeah, just a skeptic. You know, he's in a world where, like, he has no idea what's going on. Like, he was in the academic world, and that's all he really knew. And then that academic world went away. Maybe he's a metaphor for, like, postgraduate life. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I just like what he's about. I like how laid back he is. He's also smoking weed in Boulder, Colorado. And I just like his attitude, how he wants to just have a good time. And he knows, like, the severity of the situation, but he knows he has to do it, and he's not afraid of doing it, but he's also not afraid of questioning it either. He doesn't go into it blind.
Okay, and who did you despise the most?
Not Harold. Not Harold, that's for sure. Honestly, I liked him up until this point. Probably Flag.
You despise Flag the most this episode?
Yeah. Fully despise him because, these people, without Flag, Vegas would just be a fun stronghold and kind of like, bringing back the fun and decadence of, like, you can have legal fun in Vegas, and, a lot of people just emulated there to just have a great time. And, they didn't, who knows if half of the people there even knew who Flag was before they showed up. And, like, we don't know how many people had dreams. Like, are we to just assume that these people had dreams? And then you have Randall Flagg, who's just like ruining Nadine's life and, you know, twisting her mentality. And you got Lloyd, who went from being a criminal to he's living his best life. And I actually grow happier for Lloyd every time I see this show. And yeah, just Flagg's ruining it, man. He's just a dick. And I'm not a fan of that.
My favorite character, or the one I identified the most with, was Kojak.
Yeah, Kojak.
I was like, Kojak was like, yo, this is weird. All right, I guess I'm rolling with y'all. But you know what? I think I'm going to stay back with Stu because y'all about to go into a trap and I'm good right here. So I was definitely feeling Kojak. It was great to see him back. And maybe a little bit of Ray too, where she was kind of like, why are we covering this guy up? And a little bit, she was real. And Ray has been very real this whole season. And she's been a very great highlight to me when Tom isn't around. And the character I despise the most, I don't know, I think it maybe is a tie between Flagg and Nadine a little bit, because I feel like this was like the lowest point for Nadine in terms of me having any kind of sympathy for her. She made so many decisions that were just kind of like, I'm the queen. And she just really, really fed into this whole thing of wanting to be important. And it really was her undoing and killing Harold. Not that Harold didn't deserve it, but still making that choice to do it. And just being so delusional. You know, I wasn't necessarily disgusted by her or anything, but I was just like, out of everyone here, she's just, it's like, you did this to yourself, girl. I know we're saying poor Nadine in some regards, but in the most part, I'm kind of like, nah.
I apologize if my
answer deserve this.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I apologize if my observation came from a sexist standpoint, but no, Nadine.
No, I didn't say it.
Okay, but I mean, I thought back in my head, maybe that's the anxiety talking, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, but Nadine became this way because of Flagg. But I also understand that, you know, Flagg didn't tell Nadine to kill Teddy. So,
right. I think I still dislike her over the Teddy situation.
Me too. Thanks, my sister, Nadine.
Okay. Yeah, we still miss Teddy. But yeah, let us know in the chat and also in the replay. Thank you again for joining us. Who you like the most this episode and who you despised the most this episode, because we are winding it down. It almost feels like there needs to be more episodes in this season, but y'all, we've only got 2 left. So unless there's another season up someone's sleeve, they call this a mini series though. So I don't think there will be. Maybe there's going to be something else. We don't know. Let us know your predictions in the replay, in the comments, and also in the chat. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us for episode 7, The Walk. A lot of stuff happened. We had a lot to dive into and dig deep into. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have even more next episode. And I kind of feel like next episode is going to let us know if we can solidify in saying how much we liked this miniseries or how much we were like, no. Because I think a lot of people are still on the line when it comes to this adaptation. So that's where we're standing, y'all. That's where we're standing. Gotta take our stand next week when we figure out whether or not this was a good adaptation or anything. So once again, thank you all for joining us. For me and Michael, let's continue to get creepy together, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.